This is the Ready Set Podcast, and here's your host, me, Joe Persinger.
Hey, how was your week, you fucks? Alright, Klaus, we do this every week. Can you cut the fucking music, please? Thank you, sir. Alright, just a quick reminder for everyone to hit the like button on our Ready Set Podcast Facebook page or subscribe to the podcast on Mixcloud, Spreaker, or Apple Podcast or YouTube. Please rate us on Apple Podcast, leave a review, and if you like what you hear, please share with your friends on social media. This is your one-stop shop current events and politics podcast. If society's a joke, then we're just here for the first set. Are you ready? Set podcast! All right, it's Space Rocks time. Out of the 20 podcasts I've done so far, this by far is probably the first week I've seen some lightweight news media publications report on what has been called a quote-unquote city killer. But more on that in just 1 second. But first, here's what we had literally thrown at us this week. This morning on July 29th, 1:22 a.m. Eastern Time, asteroid named 2019 NN4, which is 141 feet long, which is basically the size of the Chicago Water Tower, basically was about 1.6 million miles from the Earth's center, traveling at a whopping 8,400 miles an hour.
I ain't seen the floater pitch since Scuffy McGee!
Next asteroid actually was a few days ago, July 24th, 6 in the morning Eastern Time, 2015 HM10, about 360 feet long, bigger than the Statue of Liberty. And I wonder if it accepts the world's poor people. Probably not. Traveling at a speed of 21,273 miles an hour. You're going to have to throw it a little bit harder than that, Greg. And it was about 2.9 million miles from the Earth's center. The next one, later that afternoon, or in the afternoon, I should say, on July 24th, passing by us at 2:36 Eastern Time. The name is 2019 OE. It's 174 feet, traveling at 20,000 miles an hour at a distance of 598,635 miles.
Just a bit outside. He tried the corner and missed.
Holy hell, that's not a bad throw, Greg. Still needs some mustard on it, though. So actually earlier in the morning at 9:31 a.m. on July 24th, 2019 OD. Sounds like a gangsta. I wonder what the D would stand for. Anyway, 360 feet in diameter, traveling at 42,900 miles an hour. Now here's where it gets interesting. This would normally be a distance that we would make a big deal about. But, well, you'll see when we get to that in a second. So this asteroid passed us at 221,234 miles. Wow! That's in the wheelhouse! To put that in perspective, the moon is at an average of 238,855 miles from Earth. So as Greg throws that pitch, it's basically... Nice job, Greg. Way to go. Now we have what is known as, that has been dubbed this week by the lightweight publications or mainstream media as the city killer. Let's see, the name of it is 2019 OK. Might have to change that name to CK or something a little bit more threatening, like maybe 2019 Soy Boy. I digress. So it's 426 feet long. It's almost the size, I think, the base of the Great Pyramid of Giza, traveling at, holy hell, 55,000 miles an hour. That was the sound of a fireball basically blowing by us. And that's the kind of heat you need to that's the kind of pitch you get when you got to put a stake behind your catcher's glove. Wow. Can you believe that? Anyway, here's what the crazy part is. It only passed us at a distance of 45,000 miles. Right down the pike, Greg. Wow! Now, what's really interesting here is multiple news sites are reporting that this asteroid was able to squeak by CNEOS and European detection centers that monitor these asteroids orbiting the sun and our neck of the woods. And even more interesting is that before this asteroid buzzed the Earth, The asteroid approached the moon at a distance of 210,000 miles an hour, which we talked about earlier. That's about, 28,000 miles or so less than the average distance between the Earth and the moon. What is being suggested is that since this asteroid tends to buzz the Sun, Venus, and the Moon, the gravity of these planets can affect the various distances of the asteroid. So, for instance, in July of 1981, this same asteroid, 2019 OK, was 32 million miles away from Earth. And then when it's expected to pass us again in 2024, it's going to be at a distance of 46 million miles. So basically, scientists believe these gravitational keyholes created by these various planets and the moon and the sun have a direct effect on this asteroid's trajectory. And this asteroid actually kind of sounds like my career trajectory in the food service industry, constantly being affected by various shitty managers I've orbited day in and day out. The metaphor makes sense. Trust me. Plowing ahead. All right, you know what time it is. The juice is loose! And my computer is being a jerk. Anyway, here we are. So OJ posted a video to Twitter roughly a week ago lamenting that some of his rushing records are going to be broken and that they would probably be at a higher number if he had 2 extra games that modern-day running backs have today. So the Juice also conceded that his records are made to be broken. Good that he's nice and humble, I guess. So I'm telling you, if this guy was elusive off the field as he was on the field, we'd still be looking for his wife's killer, and that's in air quotes. However, I'm sure Marcia Clark begs to differ with me. He juked the LA County District Attorney's Office like his glory days in Buffalo, making Barry Sanders seem like molasses drizzling uphill in a bizarro world where Hillary Clinton is president and everybody thinks she's not corrupt. Well, I'm not sure what happened there. Anyway, moving on to the next segment. So this is something I promised we'd do. This is going to be called Not a Florida Woman, a.k.a. a California Woman. An enraged wife hits her husband with laptop during an argument over other women in a plane in Miami. A woman on an American Airlines plane about to take off from Miami threw a laptop at her husband, hitting a flight attendant and a passenger. So according to a police report, a California woman on her way back from this overseas trip became enraged with her husband while waiting for their flight to depart from Miami to LAX. So yes, this isn't a Florida woman story. Like I said earlier, it's more of a California woman in Florida story. You still with me? So alcohol and a petty attitude played a role in this public squabble. Apparently the husband decided to ignore his wife after arguing about her drinking, and the crazy, petty California woman became enraged when she claimed she caught him looking at another woman. You know, I think this guy should probably work on his vetting process, because he's stuck with this crazy bitch for life. Poor bastard. So long story short here, the soy boy husband gets bitch slapped. The persons on the plane collectively grasp in horror. Do we have that sound? No, we don't have a sound for that. Oh well. And as he whines aloud that, "You was assaulting me," she takes it up a notch. So as the soy boy man attempts to walk away from the situation, he gets clocked by a flying laptop that was hurled in the air, like the respect his wife has for him, hitting the man and a flight attendant and a passenger. While throwing the laptop, she also yelled, "I'm assaulting you?" Yes, lady, you are. Fucking crazy bitch. To make matters worse, the soy boy man, or the soy man boy, we should call him, refused to cooperate with police and was put on another flight back to LAX. It wasn't clear what happened to the drunkard wife. So a few things here. Either this guy has been neutered, hates the police so much he let his wife get away with disrespecting him in public, or this guy has no job, is dependent on this lady to live day-to-day life, and let alone travel the world. I believe they were down in Ecuador, coming back, stop in Miami. Or they're smuggling drugs. Who knows? Hey, California, take your trash and leave it with the homeless on the streets of L.A. Yeesh. Don't people know how to behave in public? I mean, no is the answer to that question. But it's just the fact that people think like this is okay. It's unbelievable. And speaking of unbelievable, let's get to our next one. So Angry Orchard, a crappy apple cider beer company, fires a manager and security team who a couple says racially profiled them mid-proposal. So thanks to the Georgia state lawmaker, if you're not familiar with that story, there was a state legislator who basically got in a guy's face in Publix because she was trying to promulgate a narrative that he was telling her to go back to the place where she came from. And then as the story progressed through the days, it basically came out that she's a fucking liar. And thanks to her and all these other racial hoaxes like Jussie Smollett over the last few years, the media and minorities are so hellbent on creating a narrative that we live in some kind of postmodern Jim Crow era. But how did this happen? If you're a Democrat, you're probably going to say because President Trump got elected. But if you're a common sense thinker, you just know this is just all a bunch of crap. So bringing me back to our original story here about Angry Orchard. How did this happen? Did it happen? Maybe it did. Maybe it didn't. But don't tell me, but Joe, Angry Orchard acted swiftly. Just like Nike capitulated to soy boy Colin Kaepernick, like the way the Chicago media got on its knees and unzipped Smollett's pants, pulled his loose-fitting sweatpants around his knees, opened its mouth, and I think you see where this is going. So there's no way to know what the true motives in either of these parties are. All we can definitely say here is that these businesses are prisoners to social media campaigns that claim racism and discrimination, and they will capitulate and fire people all in the name of public relations, not because they think your idea of racism actually exists. So I think as far as the story goes, basically these people were having a party, drinking, having some fun, and I guess as this guy was proposing, the security guard came over and accused them of stealing a bunch of stuff. And again, maybe this is true, maybe it isn't. The point overall is all these people are claiming these racial hoaxes to the point where, let's say this story is actually accurate. Maybe these people were being racially profiled. But when you have Smollett, the Georgia state lawmaker, there were various other racial hoaxes going on. Like, I think a server was writing that someone wouldn't tip her because she was black. I mean, there's various stories like that, all to come out that the server was the one that wrote that on there. So my point here overall is that even if this one is true, there's so many fucking people crying wolf, you can't even tell anymore. All right, let's move on to the next one. So can you imagine a world without the NFL? Is there a timeline in our universe where another version of the NFL exists, even if it exists at all? Let me pose another question. With a question. What does this hypothetical situation and the historic 1915 Eastland disaster have in common? Well, I'm going to break that down in 1 second, but for those wondering, what the hell is the Eastland disaster? Let me explain. So 2,500 working class folks arrived to the SS Eastland in downtown Chicago early morning on July 24th, 1915. The ship was going to take a company retreat across Lake Michigan for the Western Electric Telephone Company's picnic retreat in Michigan City, Indiana. As the former cargo ship filled with immigrant employees and their families, the ship, which was originally built for cargo, meaning the abundance of its weight is supposed to be at the bottom of the boat. So this thing isn't built for 2,500 people to be standing at the top waving to everyone. Well, with all this weight on the top of the ship and really nothing on the bottom to balance it out, the ship became top-heavy, and the Eastland began to list and tip over into the Chicago River, turning the underbelly of the boat into an instant death trap. Speaking of disastrous sinking ships in Chicago, has anyone been watching the Cubs lately? Has football season started yet? I mean, that Cubs bullpen is just atrocious. I'm getting fired up. How do you sign Craig Kimbrell? This guy blows a lead. Anyway, where was I? Let's answer the question posed at the beginning of this segment. I'm going to tell a story first. A young man who was obsessed with gaining muscle and putting on a few extra pounds. No, Ken, that's not me. This is a story about someone else. Before heading to a downstate university to play football, was supposed to be aboard the SS Eastland. His older brother took extra time weighing him in and making him a little late to his work outing company retreat. This man held a summer job with the Western Electric Telephone Company and was going to play in the company baseball game at the picnic. But by the time he got to the boat, it was already tipped over. And this young man ended up being George Halas, who went on to the University of Illinois and graduated 5 years later, served in the Navy, briefly played for the New York Yankees, and then moved to Decatur, Illinois for a job with the A.E. Staley Company, which he later became the player coach for the Staley Company's football team. and probably one of the best investments any man could make, which was $500, he moved the team to Chicago and, well, I think you kind of know the rest. Patrick McCaskey, George Halas's grandson and vice president, said in a video on ChicagoBears.com, if he had been one of the fatalities, I don't know that the National Football League or the Chicago Bears would have been in existence. So the next time your dickhead boss tries to lecture you about being a few minutes late, educate him about the plight of George Halas, and while your dickhead boss sets his lineups for his fantasy football league. He won't care, but deep down, he'll get your point. Next story. So for those of you that don't know, Woodstock 50 has been basically, it's been a shit show in trying to plan this thing. I think they were originally going to put it out in New York where they had it originally, and they couldn't get permits because, Democrats are Democrats. So they decided, hey, let's move it to Maryland. I mean, this brand is dead. You're a sucker if you go. I've got a better idea. I hear the Fire Festival is coming to Chicago on a man-made island in Lake Michigan. There's going to be pavilions filled to the hilt with gold, unicorns, flowers from Jupiter, and I even heard there's going to be an exhibit of alien mammals imported from the TRAPPIST-1 planetary system over 40 light years away. That's not piquing your interest? Well, maybe you'd like to visit the bungalows. The website claims these bungalows were hand-carved by Amazon warriors and revived by Chinese laborers who were excavated from various parts of the country's mass graves detention camps. I even heard the guy overseeing the bungalow operation directed the construction of roughly 76 kilometers of the Great Wall of China. That was a big get. Vegetarian Democrats need it not worry. The plant-based food that's being served was slaved upon by children from the Maldives and Bangladesh. Oh, what's that? You're worried about climate change being affected by this non-existent festival? No need to worry. Clean gas and flammable air has been imported from clean rooms inside of India's palaces, and it's even rumored that helium and an unspecified gas that is yet to be discovered is also being imported and freshly excavated from Neptune. You're a fucking moron if you go to Woodstock. Go fuck yourself, you hippie fucks. And yeah, they just announced that it's a free concert. That's how desperate they're getting. Good God. Fucking Woodstock. Does anyone remember Woodstock 99 when the whole place was set fire to on that, I think it was an airstrip in New York. Maybe that's why the New York State doesn't want it there. They just know it's a fucking disaster. All right. This is something that I was talking about last week. Oh, God, I love my computer. It just hates me. I finally got my wireless thing fixed, and now it's just, Anyway, so GTA Online Diamond Casino update. The update on the update. So if you're a gamer, you've probably noticed the massive casino update that was added to the online component of Grand Theft Auto 5. And as a consumer of said product, I gotta say, I'm a fan. The casino is visually appealing. It engages and creates a completely different layer on top of the other big updates that have been added into the game over the last few years. I will say, unless you're some unemployed fuck living in your mom's basement, it's impossible to be involved in every aspect of GTA Online anymore. There's just so much stuff to do. Now, for me personally, I can barely keep up my nightclub and my bunker up and running with supplies because I'm too busy playing slot machines, 3-card poker, blackjack, or one of my favorite money makers, horse racing. But I'm going to get to that in just 1 second. I haven't purchased a penthouse yet. That's kind of one of the bigger selling points in this, because with the penthouse, you have, and I think we talked about this earlier, you can add an office, a bar where there's just, basically the bar is almost like it's your nightclub in your house. So it's kind of redundant, but it's still pretty cool. There's an arcade, a spa, and you keep going here. Now, outside of these penthouses being on the pricey side, I'm still struggling to understand the rush to buy it. For one, if I know Rockstar Games, they're going to put these fuckers on sale eventually, so I might as well just wait for that. Now, the choice to buy these penthouses comes in 3 different tiers. There's the top tier, which is called the Baller Package, which has all the bells and whistles and is upward to about $6.5 million. The second one is basically Baller Light. I forgot what they actually called it, but I'd like to call it Baller Light. It still allows you to renovate and add more to the penthouse and is roughly $3.5 million. I don't remember specifically what it has. I didn't spend that much time looking at it, mostly because the third tier seemed to be, the lesser tier, I should say, seemed to just be more appealing because it's basically an a la carte version. You know, the baller package comes with everything, the spa, the arcade, the whole, like I said, all the bells and whistles. Baller Light maybe comes with half of it. And the third one, which I'm going to talk about here, is basically a bare bones penthouse that starts at $1.5 million. And it allows you to add a lounge, which is, I think, maybe $400,000. And then from there, you can add all the other things: your garage, your spa, your arcade, your bar and nightclub, your private dealer for gambling and stuff like that. And you can just add as many bells and whistles as you like. And again, I struggle with shelling out the cash for this. Because, again, I go to my first point. I know they're going to eventually put this fucking shit on sale. And I spent almost $7 million on that fucking doomsday bunker, and I don't even use it. So I'm waiting for the fire sale. Here's my favorite part. The gambling. This is where the fun is at. It starts with the main room of the casino, the Lucky Wheel, and the orange Truffaut, I think that's how you say it, Truffaut sports car being the centerpiece of the room. You walk into the casino, there's a bright orange sports car and a rotating display wheel, the Lucky Wheel right behind it. So far, I think I won about $20,000 in chips, a bunch of rep points, and a sweater. And I gotta say, Rockstar did an amazing job on the visuals of this casino. It's very visually appealing, and I think I really like the whole diamond thing. It just adds a pizzazz. Yeah. The slots are fun. The high-stakes gambling adds a great adrenaline rush, and the horse racing is, well, it's interesting. So far from what I've seen as far as the horse racing, just bet on the number one horse. Now, I will say it does appear that maybe Rockstar has fixed this in a recent patch, because I had 100,000 chips a few days ago, and I just started betting on the number one horse because that's basically how I amassed all that, and now it's basically gone. So either way, it's a great new element to the game. It's pretty exciting. And then also, if you do play this game, next time you're at Ammunition, grab yourself a gas can. All these idiots that are playing the game park their car right outside of the front of the casino. And I'm going to tell you something. That's a mistake. Because what I like to do is I walk up to this person's car, equip my gas can, and just empty the motherfucker on their car. I mean, the whole gas can. Dump it on the hood, walk it around to the top. I mean, I stand on the car and just empty that thing. And then you got to do the nice little trail around it. And then you just back up, shoot your gun at it, and you just watch it just light up and then explode. Now, I'm not going to lie. There's a few times I was literally in the middle of doing this and was caught in the act and swiftly blown away by someone exiting the casino as they watched me vandalize the car. Which leads me to my next point about the casino entrance. It's a bloodbath, bro. There's always some kind of prick hanging around the corner waiting for you to exit the casino or show up, and your name is basically at the end of this person's barrel. But it's so fucking fun. And if only I had a crew. If only. But like I said, my friends have lives, and I don't. All right, let's plow ahead. So a New Jersey woman says an Uber driver gave himself a $100 tip and a 5-star rating. Donna Wilson said the driver had asked to see her phone so he could make a route adjustment because apparently he got lost on the way back to their house from the airport. And basically in those few seconds that he had her phone, he opened the app and basically gave himself a tip and a 5-star rating, a $100 tip, if anything. And this is why I think Uber is trash. I mean, not only that, it's employed by trash and independent contractors who are trash. Everyone knows how I feel about Uber, as we talked a few weeks ago about it. As I think I covered that in like episode 10, I believe, or something like that. Long story short, I'll give you the recap. I left my keys in my driver's car, and that sketchball avoided my calls and texts to meet up with him so he could drop off my keys to collect a $15 lost item fee. You know, go fuck yourself, Uber. You and your trashy drivers. I'm all about Lyft now, although I'm not going to need it like I used to, but I digress. So this dickhead driver fucks over these people and the company he works for $100? I mean, he gave himself 5 stars, and now he's not even a part of the app anymore. What's he going to do? Go work at Dunkin' Donuts? Here's my guess. Either he's going to work for Lyft or just use another name to drive under. You fucking shade ball. The company and the driver. All you guys can go fuck yourselves. Jesus Christ. We're just full of positive stories this week, everyone. Let's move on to the next one. Okay. So, I'm getting sick and tired of these Florida natives trying to proudly tell me the summers here aren't that bad. Don't get me wrong. It's fucking hot in Central Florida. But what really drives me up the wall is when I try to explain how I'd rather sit in a dry heat in Phoenix than this broke-ass bayou fucking summer. These Central Florida summers are hot and sweltering. It's the equivalent of what a fat person's swamp ass is after a long day of walking the mean streets of great America, but on a much, much larger scale.
And that's Ready Set Podcast on Twitter in care of Joe Persinger at 420 Chicago Avenue.
That's a throwback inside joke, and I'm not talking about the Al Borland soundbite. And these Floridian fucks, most of whom have never moved more than 30 miles or 3 counties over from where they first grew up, have the fucking balls to tell me that they'd rather sit in this fucking humid summer season, also known as the ass pit of America, than a city like Phoenix, where it's a dry heat, no moisture in the air. So for those that have the pleasure of spending multiple summers in a low-elevation desert, let me break it down for you. Florida summers are like walking into that hotel sauna. It's hot, muggy, impossible to breathe in. Your clothes start sticking to your body like you're covered in Elmer's glue paste. And not the bottle of glue, that round paste tube that has a stick attached to the lid where that weirdo kid in your class used to eat from. And now for some reason, he's your fucking boss. Anyway, yeah, it's that fucking sticky. But Phoenix, or any other desert city like Tucson or Las Vegas, those summers are on the other side of the spectrum. Those summers are basically like that blast of hot air you get in your face when you open up your oven to check on that pepperoni pizza you burned last week after you fell asleep on your couch waiting for it to cook. That blast of hot air is maybe 3 times as less hot, but nonetheless, it's fucking hot. But way more bearable than this crap we have to deal with, or I have to deal with, I should say. But I admit, a desert dry heat has its drawbacks. A UNLV surgeon did a 5-year study, and to no surprise to anyone in the Southwest United States or Southern Nevada specifically, the pavement gets a little hot. So what they found with temps outside at 105 degrees, and any Phoenician will tell you this ain't shit come July and August, the pavement can reach a scorching 140 degrees. It's hot enough to cause severe burns and scarring. At temperatures outside at 111 degrees, the pavement spikes up another 7 degrees to 147. But if you're like me and you're too fucking lazy to put your shoes on, and your city is in the midst of a summer heat wave, and you want to run the garbage outside real quick, the hot pavement can catch you off guard. I mean, it's fucking hot. But there's a trick. You keep walking. You don't stop. And if anything, you use the painted lines in the parking lot and high step it with the balls of your feet. That'll spare you some pain on the old plantar fascia. Pavement in the summer in the Southwest has the same principle of walking on coals. You keep moving and you don't stop. And you high step that mother bitch if you have to. Now, I honestly picked this story so I could just bitch about the stupidity of the citizens here in this swamp-ass state and how ignorant some of them are. Kind of reminds me of a story I used to tell about 5-6 years ago. I met a girl at Red Robin. I asked her, have you grown up here in Florida? And she's like, no, I'm not from Florida. She's like, I'm from New York. I'm like, oh, so you moved here recently? And she was at least mid-20s. And she was quick to say, oh, no, I moved here when I was 2. Bitch, you're from Florida. Now, I can't tell you how many of these fucking Dixiecrat fucks I've talked to that claim this is where they'd rather be for the summer than any other extreme kind of weather. When asked if they have spent a summer in Phoenix, Tucson, I guess LA, that's a faux desert because they pump so much water over there, or Las Vegas, or if they've even visited a desert city in the heart of the summer, they shrug their lumpy shoulders and say no. And these fucks can't figure out why the majority of the country think most of them are just walking, talking, fucking joke. And now you know why. Okay, that's a little bit of a gross overstatement, but you get what I'm saying. All right, folks, you know what time it is? Let's get to the staff report.
In my hand, I hold the staff report.
So in North Carolina, a woman uses a racial slur in a restaurant in an encounter with black women. She used the racial slur during an altercation with a group of black women at a restaurant on Tuesday. I think it was Bonefish Grill, and says she's not sorry for what she did and would do it again. So this isn't about race relations. It's really about rude and obnoxious people versus someone who has no clue how to get someone involved in order to protect oneself. You've been there before. You're in a restaurant or on public transportation, maybe the gym, basically in public. And there's a group of people or persons, maybe on their cell phone or loudly engaging with their friends. What do? Well, if you're in a situation where there's no authority, or what I like to refer to as leverage on your side, I'll explain that in a second. But just ignore this person or gaggle of overgrown teenagers. If you can't ignore them, switch trains, switch seats, or just move away in general. But if you're in a restaurant, like this lady was, your options of moving away from the problem is limited, especially if you're at Bonefish. Why is every Bonefish I go to so fucking small? But I digress. Now, this lady's situation, she approached the table twice. Twice! So this is obviously an issue of two parties acting like overgrown children. One party, antagonistic attitude, enraged the other. Is it really that hard to say, my bad, sorry for disturbing you? It's not. Some people are just overgrown assholes. But the lady who dropped the N-bomb, she made the wrong decision right out of the gate. She's not on a CTA Red Line platform, train, or bus. She's in a restaurant where decent human behavior is required. You know, that thing called respect and courtesy of others, especially if drinks are involved. Because as you get crunked, you tend to get louder and, well, that's the number one warning sign guests are being overserved. And a responsible server or manager are responsible for curtailing that behavior. You know, look up dram shop laws. And actually, I have a perfect example of why this is kind of something restaurants have to be responsible for. Now, to backtrack a little bit, when I'm talking about being in public, on public transportation, you know, any elevated subway or any elevated line or subway in a major city, there's really no authority there to kind of curtail people's behavior. So that's why you kind of will see people just being fucking dicks because they know they can get away with it. But when you're in a restaurant, it's a completely different ball game here. And this story seems to have stemmed from, you know, some ladies having a few drinks, having a good time, probably being a tad bit overserved and being a little loud. And what I'm trying to ultimately get here is that this lady had an option where she didn't have to approach the table by herself. And this is kind of what I'm going to cement my point with, is that's why she had leverage in this situation. And these dram shop laws are exactly kind of what we're talking about here. So for me personally, I think I was coming in a transitional period on a Saturday or something like that. And someone had a table. He was trying to get the hell out of there. So he transferred me the table of these three guys that were drinking. It might have been a bigger party, actually. These were just the three dudes left over with a tab still. And this guy one of the guys was just clearly overserved. I want to say I might have given him a beer, but I wasn't there long enough to understand, nor was anything communicated to me that this guy was probably a little inebriated. Again, I could take some personal responsibility for that. But again, it would have helped if I had a little heads up. Anyway, this guy was so fucking smashed, he wandered into the kitchen. And then I had a nice long talking to, but I was able to kind of get out of that situation because I'm not the one who overserved him. Even if he did order. Actually, I think what happened was his friends ordered him a beer, so that's probably why they really didn't come down on me. Point being, restaurants don't want to overserve guests because ultimately they will be held responsible. So this N-bomb lady, that's the North Carolina N-bomb lady, has a ton of leverage in this situation, like I was saying earlier. All she had to do was get a manager involved and say, hey, these people are clearly tipsy and are disturbing my experience here at this overpriced fish corporate restaurant. They would have mediated this situation. It's their responsibility, after all. Ask them to pipe down or pay their check and leave. That's probably what the managers would have done. I mean, they wouldn't have just kicked them out. That would have started a whole nother thing, as we've discussed about racial hoaxes and stuff in this podcast. But they most likely, if the manager was reasonable, would have just asked them to just, cut the shit. Just keep it quiet. If they didn't, they'd probably walk over and say, just pay your check and get the hell out. Anyone want to bet that these ladies probably left an 8% tip?
And that's Ready Set Podcast on Twitter in care of Joe Persinger at 420 Chicago Avenue.
So instead of getting the manager involved, this lady saunters over there like an overbearing bulldozer parent and attempts to scold this group of ladies twice. Twice! And now she's being blasted in the news and ceding the moral high ground to these derelicts who are probably a little tipsy and misbehaving to begin with. Here's some advice for you fucks in the restaurant industry, employee or guest. If you're unhappy, go get a manager involved. And do me a favor, be nice about it. Sure, you might feel slighted for whatever reason, but that's someone's kid or parent also. Would you want someone to treat your offspring or your parent that way? I didn't think so. So behave in public and try not to be a dick, or you're going to end up on the news, or worse, this podcast. Let's see, what else do we got here? Oh, yeah, that's right. All right, let's get to this next story. So in Oakland, there was a situation where a gentleman named Jogger Joe, I'm not sure how I feel about that name, was basically caught on someone's cell phone video taking a homeless man's stuff that was basically blocking a jogging path and throwing it into the lake. And this basically caused an uproar. And this viral video triggered anger and outrage, followed by support. But did anything change? Well, when will these liberal douchebags learn? Is this really about helping someone out? Or is this a person or persons, I'm going to use a centennial hipster verb here, flexing? So they set this guy up, or at least attempt to. So the homeless guy who had his shit thrown out into the lake by Jogger Joe was a... So basically, they attempt to help this guy out. They got him a haircut, a job interview. They did a GoFundMe for him. And after all this help these people did, he denies the help. I mean, what the fuck is this shit? And this is why these welfare and government support programs are a load of shit. This is why socialism can never work. It doesn't create the drive in people. They become stuck. What crazy fuck wants to live on the streets? In a tent, nonetheless. Because that's what this homeless guy ended up telling these people that got him the haircut, got him a cell phone, got him the job interview, got him the GoFundMe money for an apartment. He denied it all. Because he said, I don't want to be a part of that world. And then when this proactive citizen cleans up the trash, Jogger Joe is who I'm talking about, literally and figuratively speaking, this soy boy gets offended? Is this even real? It's so comical to see these soy boy fucks doing what they call the right thing, only to be blown off by some homeless dirtbag fuck because the vagabond doesn't want to live in the world. Or live in that world, I should say. Hey, you fucking vagabond prick. You do live in this world. And not only are you a fucking drain on society, but your mere existence is the bane of other people's reality. Back to these soy boy do-gooders really quick. Getting dicked over and bent over the barrel all at the same time. But why is that? Maybe they want to help. Maybe. But in this outrage cancel culture, what you see here is a bunch of soy boy fucks who want recognition via the internet, or some viral social media story like a Boy Scout wants a merit badge. Do us all a favor and quit wasting your time on these Drainos of society. If you want your cancel culture merit badge of social media, volunteer time at a homeless shelter by getting off your ass and scooping soup in a bread line, if those things even still exist. Or walk across the bay and pick up all the shit that's spread around your literal and figurative shit city and do some real good. But we donated the GoFundMe proceeds to a few shelters. Like I said, you soy boy fuck. Any numbnut can panhandle for panhandler hobos, but a real man minds his own fucking business and lets nature weed out the weak. Or in Jogger Joe's case, he's doing some shit, only to be accosted by some soy boy fucks. Donate your time instead of dumping off a few stacks and wiping your hands clean of this situation like you're done wiping your ass. You know, actually I like that phrase. Panhandle for panhandlers. Kind of makes me think of one of these trust fund soy boys should create a tax haven charity for these Drano homeless fucks by feeding them in a kitchen called Panhandlers for Pancakes. Yeah, I like that. Panhandlers for Pancakes. If it was me, I'd just open up a pancake shop and throw pancakes at homeless people. But then some soy boy or liberal bitch, or both in some cases, fucking shim fucks, will probably complain so they can get their social media merit badge. God help us. And may God help the West Coast, a.k.a. Europe Light. This podcast does not endorse any religion whatsoever. All right. Well, I also wanted to point out that this man known as Jogger Joe, I can't state this enough. I resent this name. He was not charged for disposing of the hobo's belongings, but charged with battery and vandalism, because I guess he beat up the soy boy and took his phone. Now, it's not clear if the vandalism charge is from what he did to the soy boy's phone or disposing of the non-taxpayers' things that were clogging up the jogging path. And honestly, this hobo doesn't pay taxes. Why should he get police protection? Especially when the city has the authority to dispose of people's possessions that are illegally erected, where tents are illegally erected in public places. Either way, had he just not let the soy boy get to him, he's not doing 5 years of probation. And that's kind of what's very interesting. So I'm also openly curious here. If the vandalism charge was more related to taking the guy's phone, I mean, if I was him, I would have chucked it in the water. That would explain the vandalism charge. But even if he was charged with the vandalism charge is related to him throwing the hobo stuff in the water, that's kind of iffy ground, because the city goes around and tears down these illegally erected tents in public places. So the article wasn't really clear on that, but that's kind of I just found that a little interesting. But like I said, it's just a fuck situation. I used to want to live in California. Now I don't. There's no reason to move out there. And I believe that that's a sanctuary city too. So you'd probably get shot, killed, or robbed, or both, or all of the above. That's the staff report.
We're trying to get a feel for how people spend their day.
The staff reports.
Going to do it for us this week. Check us out on Spreaker, YouTube, or Mixcloud, and Apple Podcasts. I'm your host, Joe Persinger. Thanks for listening to Ready, Set Podcast. And this is your one-stop shop current events and politics podcast. If society's a joke, then we're just here for the first set. We'll see you next week, you fucks.
Thanks for listening to the Ready, Set Podcast. Check us out next week, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter, and look for us on our YouTube channel, Ready, Set Podcast.